Hi, this is Tom, and thank you for joining. Please consider subscribing. Last week, we soldered the leads onto the motor. I just gave you a quick montage of that. And as I notated in the video, I really should have done that before I installed the motor into the transmission, or really before I installed the whole thing into the chassis rails. So that was kind of silly. Anyway, these are the two leads that we soldered on. They are bullet connectors. So solder onto the motor, solder onto the motor. The other end of the lead is what's called a bullet connector. I purchased these two and selected these two as the Traxxas XL-5 speed controller that we're going to use for now in this build. Has bullet connector, female bullet connectors. So let's go ahead and just plug those in. So we just push the bullet connector as far as we can together and then cover that connection with this rubbery cover that comes with the speed controller. This will just make sure that no metal will touch the connection. And here now the same for the black wire. It's all the way in. And we'll move this protector over. There we go. Off camera, I installed, and by installing, I just double stick taped. I did double stick tape of the speed controller on the passenger side of the device, of the chassis. And since I'm using this Traxxas speed controller, it has the Traxxas connector on it. I don't use Traxxas batteries. I use batteries that have just these regular T or Dean's connector. Not sure if you can see that. So rather than attempting to build my own converter, I just bought this one that is a Dean's male to a Traxxas. And I guess this is Traxxas female. I'm never quite sure. But anyway, that pops in there. Now I can go from my Dean's batteries to my Traxxas speed controller. Also for now, for the current time, I am using my 15, 16, 17-year-old JR Racing synthesized FM radio. It's not a digital spread spectrum radio. And this is the JR RS3000 receiver. Now, this receiver is quite large compared to the receivers in the digital sped spectrum that are ubiquitous now. And that particular receiver does not fit in the receiver box. So for now, I am just going to double stick the receiver next to it and probably just stuff the wires into the receiver box. Also, battery-wise, I do always just use these Shorty packs, and I installed the battery tray as well as the Velcro strap for that, and I just put in the Shorty battery as far forward as possible, again to put as much weight over the front end. So let's just give this a try. I'm going to plug this in and get the transmitter. You're not going to be able to see the transmitter, so my FM synthesized transmitter is on. I have everything plugged in there, and let me just power on. I'm just going to power on the electronic speed control. There it is, and we'll give this a check out. Steering is working. I'm not sure if you can see that down here. Now off camera, I set the endpoints already. So I think that is about as far as I can turn left and right without hitting something. So there is that. And then as far as throttle, now I'm not sure what's happening here. The throttle, I think I have something set up wrong. The throttle forward is very touchy. And as soon as I let off the throttle, it seems to immediately go to brake instead of to coast. Now, it's my understanding that these are functions of the electronic speed controller, but this particular speed controller has, from what I can find, again, it's the XL-5 HV from Traxxas, has very little setup capabilities. Given that, I had planned on moving to a Hobby Wing 1080 like I have in the Traxxas. When I originally did the configuration, I did that off camera because it took a long time. There is one oddity with this Traxxas XL-5 electronic speed controller and my particular radio. And that were the trim settings. The trim setting, for some reason, was very far off. And I was getting a flash, a quick blinking green light here. Luckily, I found at least one person out on the internet who had that same issue. Actually, there are several that had the issue. A couple of them didn't seem right to me, but one gentleman found that his trims were off. And I think the trims were set too high, too low. It just would not function. But as soon as I started changing the trim, throttle trim, powered it off and powered it back on, this blinking started correctly, and the throttle reverse and forward started working. So let me go ahead and turn this off. Turning the model off. Unplugging the battery. And turning the transmitter off. Okay, so model is off and safe now. Let's just talk about future weeks. As I played around with the model and played around with the plastic spring over shocks, I just came to the realization that these are terrible. These plastic shocks in this kit are just terrible. Almost everyone you read who reviews it says just don't even build them, put them on, and just buy a set of decent shocks. I was going to give them a chance. I can barely compress them as it is right now. They stick, they hang up, they're just really poor. So I went out and bought what I thought was the most inexpensive shock that I could get that are way better than these plastic shocks. So what I ended up here are the Racing Desert Lizard. So this is an internal spring shock. I know there's going to be some playing around with this to get it to work properly. However, I found these on sale. They're rated pretty well. They're rated way better than these plastic kit shocks. And I'm not going to lie, I like the orange. So we'll be installing these next week. Next week we'll be installing those. So obviously 2 pair. And then as well, just one little nod to the future, and that is I hemmed and hawed about a body and an interior for this model, and I have finally selected one. and I've placed it into the video notes. But this is the Axial AX04038 Wrangler Rock Racer. Why did I buy this? This Wrangler Rock Racer is like an open cab, and it includes effectively an interior. So for one purchase, I get a body and an interior in one purchase. So I went for that. I don't have any Jeeps. I've always wanted a Jeep, so now I have a Jeep Rock Racer. There's just one item about this. This Jeep Rock Racer is a 12.0 wheelbase. So, if you remember back to our links video, I put the rear links on here that were these here, that were for a 12.3 inch wheelbase. I need a 12.0 wheelbase. The kit comes with all of the links, and I just thought that I wouldn't be using these, but now I will. So in a future video as well, I'll be replacing these longer links with these shorter links to get a overall wheelbase of 12.0 inches. And so that's going to be great. So I plan on doing that. I plan on doing the wheelbase shrinkage and the new shock installation at the same time. As always, thank you so much for joining us here at Bryn Mawr RC. Thanks. Bye.